Hello, and thank you for tuning in to the late night hockey pregame show this time. We're breaking down game 4 of the Stanley Cup Finals ahead of time. And I'm joined by Chris Wassel. And Chris, before we get into game 4, let's talk about what we've seen through game 1 and through game 3. It's been a series dominated by the Tampa Bay Lightning. What have some of your big observations been from this series so far?
It's funny. People ask me, it's like, what do you expect from Montreal in this series? And I said to them, well, you're going to get a team that's finally going up against another team that has been there before. Uh, if you think about it, okay, Montreal faced Toronto. Okay, yeah, Toronto in postseason is like oil and water, it doesn't mix. All right, they faced Winnipeg. And for one game, it was pretty competitive, and they magically scored three goals in one period. We'll discount that disallowed goal somewhere in there. And then obviously the Scheifele hit, and that changed the entire series. So look, they got a bit of a magic carpet ride through the first 2 rounds. Then they played Vegas, and Vegas, as everybody knows, can run out of offensive gas faster than Peter DeBoer's hairline. It's just a fact. Peter DeBoer legitimately can outpsych himself as a coach, and that's exactly what happened in that series. But at the same time, you have to give Montreal credit. They faced 3 teams that they had no choosing of their own. That's the hand they were dealt. They won. They were able to ride their 2/3 of a kid line. Uh, I still don't know why they didn't play in games 1, 2. Yeah, that's another one for another time. But uh, the bottom line is they found a way to beat teams that were probably about on their level from a playoff standpoint, not a regular season standpoint, but a playoff standpoint. And that's important to note. So obviously they had that gaudy 93.5% penalty kill, which I laughed at because when I started covering the series, the first thing I looked at against Toronto, especially, their penalty kill's 24th and barely 24th. And it's like 27th on the road. It's even worse. And the first few games, obviously, Toronto had success on the power play and then seemed to just go away from what they were doing for the final 3-4 games of that series. I'll never understand it. I don't have a PhD in psychology, but something happened. And whatever that was. Tampa Bay is not like that. Look, Tampa Bay has been through the rigor. They've been through all these things. You can talk about the other stuff, the salary, yeah, yada, yada. Doesn't matter. They are a team on the verge of a dynasty. A modern dynasty. That's the key difference in this. It's not, these aren't your mama and papa's 80s Edmonton Oilers and New York Islanders. They're more like your Chicago Blackhawks of 2010, 2013, or 2010 through 2015, where they pretty much had a pretty deep run through almost every one of those years. That's what Tampa is. They're able to wear you down. And the second point, and the most important, Stephen, is I have to say this: they can play any style of hockey. You want to dump and chase? They can play dump and chase. You want to play physical? Look, game 1 was 115 combined hits or something crazy. Didn't bother them. They were able to play, wait out Montreal, and then when Montreal started making mistakes, Tampa Bay made them pay. And that's like the 2A point. And maybe the biggest difference in this series. Tampa Bay has the players that can make you pay for your mistakes, whereas Vegas didn't really have those. Winnipeg, by late in that series, was just shell-shocked. And then Toronto, well, yeah, it's Toronto.
It's with the Leafs, it's one of those things. I don't know what it is. Once the playoffs start, once the every other team ratchets it up a little bit more, Toronto just kind of stays level with the output you get in the regular season. And one other thing too, you talked about Tampa Bay being able to play any style of game. I talked about this on the last post-game show, how important the pickups of Blake Coleman and Barclay Goodrow have been to this team, because we give a lot of credit to the Kucherovs, the Stamkos, the Braden Point, the Victor Hedman, Andre Vasilevsky. And sure, it's a team game and everybody pulls their weight. But I really don't think this Tampa Bay team makes these cup runs we've seen the last couple of years without that Goodrow and Coleman injection onto the third line, because they come up in big moments. And not only that, they bring a element that the Lightning I thought were really missing, which was physical hockey, a line that can wear down an opposing team's top line. And that line has shown it can do that throughout the playoffs.
And the key point is they're a physical line that can, well, score. I mean, for the lack of a better term, they can make that gives you three lines basically that can score goals.
Yeah, and look how big that goal Coleman scored in game 2 was, where Tampa Bay's getting it taken to them through 40 minutes.
Hey, I'm not going to say I've seen that before as a Devils fan, but I may have seen that goal as the Devils one might have been actually a little bit better, arguably, because he was on his back. But
it was one hand too.
It's the same type of idea. Look, it's one of those things where Blake Coleman, game 1, 11 hits. He set the tone, particularly in this late in the second and third periods when Tampa Bay started to get its legs. Game 2, obviously, yeah, everybody's going to talk about that goal until the cows come home. Game 3, he adds the insurance empty net goal on a play that probably 99 out of 100 players don't make, but he makes it because Blake Coleman, who, by the way, is an unrestricted free agent at the end of the season. Not that Tampa has to worry about the salary cap again.
Yeah,
they might, but for now, that's the common point in this. When you have lines like this, like Tampa has, and you have a balance like they do that allows you to play the way that they can. It's tough for a team like Montreal, who's basically predicated on mostly defensive hockey with timely transitional goals, to mount much of anything, because Tampa Bay basically has an answer for everything. Look, Montreal scored 3 times in game 3. And comically, Tampa Bay had an answer each and every single time. And it was prompt, and it was usually ridiculously quick. And that no matter what happens tonight, that has to be sobering, because if Tampa does that again, I mean, it doesn't matter how good Carey Price is in net. It doesn't matter how good their system is. I mean, you got to figure there's going to be more penalties tonight, you would think, maybe, because there's only 2 minors combined in game 2 that resulted in power plays. And Tampa scored on theirs, by the way. And that's been kind of a theme in this series too. Tampa has finally had the better power play in a series that I absolutely needed. Unlike in Game 7 against the Islanders, which they didn't need, but they kind of did. It's more fun that way. They made it a lot more interesting than it probably should have been. And I don't know how the officiating is going to go tonight, because if you know, yeah. I want the lottery numbers for tomorrow and Wednesday.
Yeah, I don't even know if
Mega Millions in the Powerball.
That's gonna go.
I talked to Josh from Scouting the Refs last night, and the first thing he said to me, he's like, "I don't think I've ever seen a playoffs quite like this, where you don't know from night to night what's going to happen with referees and such, and calls being missed and calls not being missed, and we won't call all these things, but we'll call this little stick foul here."
Yeah,
and it's one of those things, like you said, you just hope it doesn't decide a game, and at least so far in this series, at least, it thankfully has not.
No, I think the disparity between these two teams talent-wise has really been what's decided this series. And you brought up a good point of Tampa Bay being able to play any style of hockey. Montreal, it's not the same, right? Like, this is a Montreal team that they'll score first, and then they've become very hard to figure out after that. They're very good at limiting opponents to shots from the outside. They don't give up a whole lot of good looks, and whatever good looks they've been giving up, Carey Price has been excellent and rock solid and has been able to stop them. This series, we haven't seen that same Carey Price, and part of that, I think, is due to Montreal playing from behind, having to take a few more risks, but in turn giving up some pretty good looks the other way. And also, one area I've noticed with Montreal too, through the first few rounds, very reliant on the top four. Didn't really see a whole lot of the likes of Eric Gustafson and John Merrill. In this series, they've kind of had to play those two guys a little bit more. And the Lightning, like you said, four lines have just exposed those two guys whenever they've been on the ice. And it begs the question, should they have gone to Romanov earlier in this series? Because we know Alexander Romanov, sure, maybe he's not an offensive dynamo, but this is someone who has played good defensive hockey in his own zone. Should this been a move that Montreal had made earlier, or what else have you seen from Montreal that you've kind of shook your head at with how they've approached this series?
Well, other than they're probably looking the other across the way and wondering what they missed in Mikhail Sergachev, which is the most obvious part of all this. Look, the roughest part you knew going in was that Tampa Bay was going to expose that third pairing. They were going to, for the lack of better terms, undress that pairing and score on them. It was just a question of how much Montreal would be forced to play them. John Merrill is not an NHL defenseman. I don't care what anyone says. And but his time in Vegas, he was insulated with probably 3 or 4 of the best defensemen in the league and a team defense that was one of the best, period. In New Jersey, and I still remember this moment, I sat there in the press box. I had Greg Wyshynski on the one side, and I had Mike Morial on the other. And it was maybe his second season. And I remember sitting behind the net, and he had this deer in headlights look. And I took one look at the two of them, and I'm like, this guy's in the NHL. I was like, even I know I could have made a pass at least 5 seconds ago. 2 seconds later, goes to make a pass, turns it over. Schneider has to make a ridiculous save. And I'm like, man, I hate when I'm right. At least especially with this. This guy is not and to be fair, I mean, he's carved out a nice little third pairing career for himself, and much respect to that. However, in a series like this, you need your third pairing to be somewhat competent, and it just isn't. And look, with Gustafson, you know what you're getting. You're getting a guy in very small samples that can be quite good. You play him any more than that, and for a lack of a better term, it's like Gremlins if you feed Gizmo after midnight or you put him in water. Very bad things are going to happen. And in this series especially, it doesn't even matter, Steven, if it's last line change or not. At some point, you have to put them on the ice. And there is no way Luke Richardson, Alexander Burrows, and Dominique Ducharme can shelter this in an effective way. They just basically have to hope that in those amount of shifts that they dodge disaster.
Yeah, it's when you look at it, this Tampa Bay team has been able to have success. Basically, the lines 1 through 4. I'd argue probably the second line has been the least effective, but they've been without Killorn, who plays a big role on that line. Maybe doesn't get the credit he deserves.
He is one annoying player, isn't
he? I, as a fan of an opposing team, you get so frustrated watching Alex Killorn just pick away, because he's talented enough that you can put him out against other teams' top lines too, and he just knows how to just get under their skin. So not having him, I think, has affected that second line, and they've been trying to figure that one out. They put Johnson on there, Tyler Johnson to start. Now they put Ross Colton on there. I thought the results were a little bit better, but this Tampa Bay team, lines 1 through 4, I mentioned Tyler Johnson. He's had a lot of success this series too. He's been an effective player. It's like, what's the matchup for that third pairing? And I think that's really caught up to Montreal. And maybe there's been a leveling out as well between the pipes. We saw Carey Price rock solid. We haven't seen Vasilevsky level out like this, but we've seen Carey Price, who was rock solid through the first 3 rounds, just really fall short here in these 3 games so far. The save percentage has dipped below 900 in this series, and that's never a good sign. You're probably not going to be on the winning side of many games when your goalie save percentage drops that low.
The the Rob Volman really bad start index, which I love for any goaltender that posts an 850 or under save percentage in a game where the quality, I think it's where the quality start percentage is 900 or greater. And Carey Price, unfortunately, at one point, his save percentage in game 3, I think for the series was around 835.
Yeah,
And
it's
I
not.
think it's
Yeah,
and I think it's still below 850 as of now. Just looking at the rough math, that's not good. I mean, and it's not all on him, but at some point, like a couple of the Montreal writers said this morning, it's a team effort. Um, at some point, your goaltender has to be able to stop a few really bad turnovers here and there, and it has leveled off. That's the reality. And you're now expecting Montreal to somehow win 4 games in a row in a series where they really haven't won one game, even by an advanced stats standpoint. They really haven't won one game at all. They've taken a period or two here and there, but again, you could dominate a period, even 2 periods, make one mistake, and that evens it right out or turns it into a negative.
Yeah, and that Blake Coleman goal in game 2, I think, really epitomizes that, where you had Montreal, who looked like the better team through the first 40, but they go into the third trailing 2-1. It was just a situation where it felt like no matter how well this Canadiens team is going to play, Tampa Bay is just a cut above, and they're just better. And I said coming into the series, Carey Price is going to have to be better than Andrei Vasilevsky if the Habs want to win a game, let alone the series. If they want to win a game, Price has to be the better of the 2 goalies. He hasn't been at really any point of this series, in any period of this series. And the results are pretty much what you would expect. If I told you at the beginning Vasilevsky was going to be the better goalie every period. So that's been a big issue for Montreal. They haven't had the goaltending. They haven't been able to play their style of hockey either because they're chasing all these games. Game 3, they're down 2-0 before you could get the popcorn ready. Like, it was not good. And now heading into game 4, we'll shift to game 4. I saw a report on Twitter, Jesperi Kotkaniemi not in the lineup tonight. He's a healthy scratch. I think that's an interesting decision by Montreal, and not one that I would personally make. I know Kotkaniemi hasn't had the best series, but I don't think you can point to any forward really on Montreal and say they've had their best series. So what do you make of that decision, or what do you expect from the Canadiens in game 4? Did they steal one at home before going back to Tampa Bay, potentially?
This was the toughest one for me because honestly, I could be wrong. I can't see it right now, and especially with the Montreal coaching staff scratching the fin of all people. When Tyler Toffoli, where are you?
Yeah.
Brendan Gallagher, okay, a little better last game, but where are you? You look, you know what you're getting with the first line in Montreal, and that's not even, I mean, yeah, Philip Deneau finally scored, and he got his pizza, but still wasn't. Again, it's not enough of an offensive thrust to be able to offset what Tampa can bring, and until Montreal can at least control that enough, they're not going to win a game in the series, and I don't think at this point in juncture they can do it because of how relentless Tampa Bay plays. And again, first line attacks, second line attacks, third line can play on both sides of the ice. The fourth line, when they're occasionally used, Tyler Johnson pops in 2 goals in game 3. I mean, who are you stopping if you're Montreal? And does Montreal have that game breaker that can put any fear in Tampa Bay right now? And that answer really is not exactly, because look, I mean, unless Cole Caulfield and Nick Suzuki play like they did against Vegas, this series is not going back to Tampa Bay. Well, the cup is, but the series
Montreal's not coming with it.
Yeah, I don't think Montreal's coming along for the plane ride this time around.
No.
Unless those two players come up with something big.
No, I agree. There has been no sign of Montreal getting close to a breakthrough. And I mean, sometimes it happens like that where you kind of get this abrupt, like, okay, where did this effort come from? It's not always that there's a, we follow hockey trends, especially for betting. Sometimes there's a breakthrough that you're like, wow, I had no idea that was even going to happen. So I'm not saying it's sports, right? This is why we play the games. No one had Montreal in the Cup final in the first place. But I don't know. I'm in agreement with you here. I think Montreal has they're like we've talked about with Tampa Bay. There's many different ways Tampa Bay can win a hockey game. With Montreal, there's one script. They need Carey Price to be on his A+ game. And not even an A game against Vasilevsky and the Lightning is going to do it at this point. He needs to be on his A+ game, and they need to score first. And we haven't seen either of those things happen yet in this series. So to think that it's going to be different in game 4 or potentially moving forward, I don't see it either. I have to ask you, though, even though we don't see it, a certain mayor of Tampa Bay is actually expecting this to happen. I don't know if you saw what happened earlier today, but the mayor of Tampa Bay, Jane is her first name. I'm blanking on her last name now. It starts with a C. I'm blanking on it now, but she predicted, or she has at least put out there, that her hope is that she hopes that the Lightning lose game 4 and they win the Stanley Cup back at home for game 5, because obviously there's the appeal of winning the cup at home. So I let me look this up actually now.
It's funny because I have the article right here. I had a good laugh when somebody said this to me.
Yeah, I'm looking this up as well. I just want to get the name of the
Jane Castor.
I remember Castor. Her. That's it. That's
basically.
it. Yep. That's it. So she has put out there that she wants the cup to come back home for game 5. So we're not seeing it, but she's hoping. I think to me, that's a very strange thing for the mayor of a city, of one of the two teams in the Stanley Cup final, to say that she kind of hopes they take it easy on the Canadiens tonight.
Yeah, I mean, wouldn't you want your team to finish off the other team as soon as possible? I mean, you can just fly home that night and bring some nice shiny thing with you and celebrate it a few extra days with the fans. I mean, it's not like it's not going to be okay to not do so. It's fine. I get there's this weird sense that you get the logic in the sense that you would be playing in front of a sold out crowd. No, you always want to win as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Look, I still remember this in 2000 when the Devils beat the Stars, and I remember how pissed off I was after Game 5, after Hull and Madonna hooked up on a play that best could be described as it was 1:30 in the morning and I'm drunk and I need a goal now. And that literally, I mean, that puck had eyes, ears, and a button made out of coal. I mean, it had a little of everything. And just the frustration of not being able to clinch a Stanley Cup final at home and having to go out on the road. Okay, so be it. We won it on the road. Great. I didn't care that. You didn't hear anybody back then say, "Oh, I totally wish this could go 7 games so we could clinch it at home."
Yeah.
You didn't hear that in 2003. The Devils, look, they were one Marty Statue of Liberty mistake from sweeping that series.
Yep.
It's like, you really think the Devils wanted that series to go 7, even though you kind of knew the result? They didn't want that to come back for a 7th game at all. Nobody did. And for a public official to come out and say that, and you knew what John Cooper's response was going to be. I'm sitting in the Zoom meeting and I'm like, there's a little bit of like almost like a pre-production sort of part of the Zoom meeting that people don't always know about. And I'm talking to a couple of the other guys via direct message on Twitter, and I'm like, I'm not asking it. No, I'm not even asking. and everybody knows what that it is because of the comments. And it's like, we'll make the Tampa guys do it. That's it. Yeah.
It's a Tampa Bay thing anyways, right?
Yeah,
like
it's just something. It's like, And it's like, and anytime you hear a journalist sit there go, I hate to ask this question, you just put your head down. You know what's going to happen. So look,
Exactly.
the simple premise is this. Herm Edwards said it best. We hate to use another sport, but you play to win the game. And that's it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm in full agreement with you there. I understand, from a city stamp, like her argument, it's not that it doesn't make complete sense. Like,
Right.
ideally, if you could have it any way, you do it in front of your crowd, in front of your fans. But I don't think you do it wishing that your team loses a game in the process in order for it to happen. I think that's the fine line there, that sure, if you could draw it up perfectly, yes, that's how you would, but hoping for your team to lose is not how I would draw things up perfectly. So I was a little shocked and taken back to hear that this morning.
Yeah. Could you imagine, God forbid, I mean, not that this would happen. You imagine if somehow Montreal won 4 straight games after this? Now, I checked for the heck of it, and for the record, Southwest Airlines only flies out of certain locations, so she's not going to be able to just get away for a while. And look, she probably would never be able to run for public office in the state of Florida ever again after that. So for her sake, when you make boneheaded comments like this, and every person at some point in this profession has, self included, you pray it does not come back to haunt you. And in her case, I would be praying really hard tonight that this does not come back to haunt her, because in the 0.00001% chance that happens, I don't want to be her.
No. Yeah, if Montreal wins game 4 and game 5, I'd be sweating a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, look, I mean, 2012 with the Devils, I mean, you're still that Stanley Cup. And it's weird to say, but God, could you imagine if the Kings had blown that series? Because they were really close to before that 5-minute major.
Yeah,
they were teetering. But the difference is with that series compared to this one, and I know a couple people in Montreal are making some comparisons to it. New Jersey was right in the first 2 games at home, and that's the difference too. The first 2 games were played in New Jersey, the next 2 were played in LA. And actually, I'm sorry, it was 2-3. It was actually 2-3-2 that year. Keep forgetting that was one of the last years that they had that. And as I said to somebody, not only were those games close, but game 1, Mark Fane hits a wide open post. I mean, that net was yawning. I mean, it was waiting for the puck to welcome it with open arms. The Devils win that game, and it's a completely different series. You did not have that moment at any point during the series with Montreal and Tampa Bay so far, aside from maybe game 2. And that wasn't in the third period. That was in the second period where it was close. And then Blake Coleman scored. Montreal got dominated the next about 8 to 10 minutes into the third period. And really, you were waiting for the inevitable insurance goal from Tampa Bay that eventually came. And it has not really been close. So could that happen where Montreal pops off a game or 2? Sure. Is it likely? No. So if, God forbid, us bettors or predictors of games of daring do get this wrong, don't shoot the messenger.
Yeah.
Because we're as much in the dark at this point as the average. I wouldn't even say the average person, but any hockey fan in general, whether they're in the business, not in the business, or just have a rooting interest.
Yeah. And, you can kind of make the parallels getting back to the Coleman goal, comparing it to the Fane off the post. You can kind of make some comparisons just because of how crucial it is for Montreal to not play from behind. Yep. So going into the third really changed their philosophy. They had to be a little bit more aggressive, which is not how they want to play at all. So you can kind of make some comparisons, but at the end of the day, you have just a Tampa Bay team, I think, that is so well equipped to play any style that it's going to be hard to muster anything or feel good about anything. Even a tie game, 1-1 going into the third period. The Lightning have so many clutch players on that side. Braden Point, Kucherov, Stamkos. I've mentioned them all already. They're a tough team to beat down. But now, okay, focusing on game 4. Before I get you out of here, Chris, a best bet, if you've got one so far for tonight's game, is there one lean, one side you like on tonight's card?
It's weird because I looked at some of the numbers, and you could almost hedge this for fun. The Tampa Bay in regulation, which hit, by the way, gloriously in game 3, but even in game 3 was still about minus 110 to minus 115, is now dead even at plus 100.
Wow.
Now, obviously, they are a minus 160 or 155 to 162 or 3, depending on your book of interest. But that Tampa in regulation is definitely one to look at. Now, the other one to look at if you're flipping and try to hedge a little bit, because look, even money is not bad. You get what you put in. Do you then sit there and go, do I put another small bet on Montreal to just simply win? Because in some cases you can get as high as plus 135. It's something to consider. I mean, look, I did this yesterday with the hot dog eating contest. I sat there, I took the DK boost at plus 125, and then parlayed it with Chestnut at the over 74.5. Plus 165 parlay. Cash.
Yeah.
Now, this is different because you're hedging. And you're hedging on the idea, well, hey, if I toss $5, I win a little less than 7. It's like $675 for $5. That's not bad.
No.
And then obviously it's 5 for 5 for Tampa to win in regulation. There's no way I would take the money line tonight for Tampa Bay. It's the number's just not there. I tried to avoid it. For soccer, that's a different story. But especially for hockey in this time of year, you want to the chances of this game going to overtime are small enough that I can take that risk of going from a minus 150 or worse bet to an near even money bet and feel safe about it, or feel relatively safe about it, to where I can then hedge and go with the plus bet to try and make some money back if I lose it. So either way, you win, which is kind of nice.
Yeah.
You're essentially just, it's just which one you want to throw. If you want to throw the same amount of money, it's fine. You want to throw a little bit of money, more money on the one, it's fine. Because you can always just toss a player prop in there or a goal prop in there if you want to, and make your money back that way. By the way, Nick Suzuki is like about plus 130 for an over 2.5 shots tonight.
Yeah, that's good value.
Yeah, it's good value, especially with Kadaki, not playing now. And you figure him and Caulfield are going to see a ton of ice time because they have absolutely nothing to lose at this point.
No, you're not holding them back.
And I think Caulfield's about even money at 2.5 as well. So if you're going to take a shot there, okay. And then you just roll the bones at that point. That's the way kind of lean tonight. You have to lean a little bit different than you would accordingly, because God, Steven, it could end.
Yeah,
it could all end tonight.
I mean,
it's crazy. I mean, you already have like the big, what they call I call it the NHL media prospect moo cow farm interview day tomorrow for all the NHL prospects.
Yeah.
So it's being moved along no matter what happens tonight. And it's a weird scenario where I thought at first, God forbid, what if this series really goes into like July 9th, 10th, 11th, etc.
Yeah.
I was like, and you're going to have an expansion draft on the 21st, and then you're going to it's why you don't want to be morbid about this in the sense of an outcome tonight, but you almost kind of like the Matrix Revolutions. You want it just to end.
Yeah, I
It's
think
weird, right?
I think you want it to end because you know that it's only going to prolong the inevitable. It feels like if Montreal wins tonight, it just doesn't seem like there's a 4-game comeback in the works here. I mean, we haven't seen any team beat Tampa Bay other than the Islanders. The Islanders took them to 7 games, but the Panthers, they dismantled in 6. They made quick work of the Canes in 5. Like, I don't see Montreal putting up a better fight than any of the teams we've seen the Lightning play already. So I just think that a win tonight would just kind of prolong the inevitable. And I'm fine with we've been doing hockey coverage, both of us, all year, and we love the game, but it just seems like this series has one sure thing coming. That's Tampa Bay Lightning winning. So a win tonight, although it would please Jane Castor a lot, I think would kind of as far as the league scheduling wise and the content cycle of the league would push things back a little bit. So I'm interested to see what happens tonight. I wouldn't necessarily hate if Montreal won tonight, but I don't see them clawing their way back into the series with a win tonight. I don't think that means much because I still think the Lightning win this one in game 5, and I don't see it going really into deep waters at all. So
yeah, I mean, we have a fun mutual interest for those listening. This is the fun part of the sidebar, if you will, of this as we're recording. Ryan Sura of Sports Betting Dime, as we all know, is an unabashed Montreal fan, and he's been trying to bet Montreal all series long. Bless his heart. And he's not the only one. Look, I know people. I know a lot of excellent bettors that in this series. It's tough. I had I don't know if you know him on Twitter. He's from Philly. We call him Big Philly Pete. The guy's on 12 Ounce Sports. He's excellent. His analysis is one of the best in the business that a lot of people don't know about, and you probably should follow him on Twitter for everybody listening. And he said this to me the other day. He's like, I'm glad I have a newborn child because it's taking my mind off the fact that this has probably been my worst postseason ever in my life. And he's like, this has taken years off of my life because just when you think you have this somewhat figured out, this postseason has thrown more knuckle pucks and more just crazy bounces than he could ever count. He's like, there is no logic or very little logic to what has happened in the Stanley Cup playoff. And I said to him, I was like, would you expect anything less during a pandemic?
Yeah, exactly.
And you kind of have to think about it. Look how last year was with Dallas, what Dallas was able to squeak into the Stanley Cup Final. And it's the same sort of, I mean, look,
you look at Khudobin too.
Yeah, and you look at the way Tampa Bay won last year in Game 6, where they won in a shutout. And it was like, look, I understand there was no fans. It was, the bubble and everything else. But Tampa Bay completely took the air out of Dallas. Just there was no coming back. And look, I understand Dallas had more. Tyler Seguin was playing with a detached everything at that point.
It was kind of incredible the fact that he was still able to skate.
He was
let alone play hockey.
He was upright. Look, for people that don't know, look at how long it took Tyler Seguin to come back this year. And even then, he was not 100%.
Yeah.
So that tells you alone that was, he showed the pictures of the recovery. I don't even know.
It was incredible.
Any average person does not recover from that and play a professional sport. I couldn't respect a player more, at least from a recovery standpoint. And of course, obviously, everybody will sit there and go, well, what were some of the injuries in this series and, the inevitable, and ask questions later. But you get this feeling like tonight that maybe something unexpected does happen, But if it's going to, Steven, it's going to happen early.
Yeah. It's going to have to for Montreal, because we've talked about it. Don't see this one going any differently if Tampa Bay, like they did in game 3, scores early and gets out to a hot start. I do not see Montreal making it back in this game.
No.
After that, it's just they're not built to play that type of hockey. So it's like I'm in full agreement. You'll know right away, which, hey, maybe is a good opportunity to live bet this one. If you're watching along and you see something early on, hey, maybe throw something on Montreal. And with Ryan Sura, a good mutual friend of ours too.
Poor guy.
You know what though? Everyone has been in Ryan's shoes, right? When you're on a side so much that you can't go off of that side anymore, right? Like
it is the worst. It's the worst feeling in the world for anybody.
Yeah.
Look, I the closest thing that I have now to this was pretty much the 2017-2018 Devils when they went on that run to make the playoffs. And legitimately, they won in spite of Keith Kincaid most nights. I, at one point, hit the Taylor Hall anytime goal prop 6 nights in a row. Okay, in the playoffs, that's hard enough for that to happen. See Braden Point. In the regular season, as you're battling for a playoff spot where you have to win practically every game to seal a playoff berth, that may be even more crazy. And yet it just kept hitting. And it was like, I got to keep betting this thing. I can't help it. Look, for the worst analogy that anybody's ever going to hear on a sports show, it is like Stimpy trying to avoid pushing the shiny red button. It's not going to, he's going to push it.
Yeah.
You know it's going to happen. You cannot help it. The other part is a few seasons ago, the Chicago Blackhawks first period over. Such a beautiful thing that hit like 22 straight times. I mean, it got to the point where it's like, You betting that tonight?
Yeah.
I mean, Alex Smith from the Ice Guys said it to me the one night. He's like, "You rolling with it?" I'm like, "You're from Chicago. You know my answer to this."
Yeah. It reminds me too, like the Brian Rust shot prop at the beginning of the year too. It was a very similar thing where Brian Rust was firing, 5 to 7 shots every night. That's just how it was. But unfortunately, we've all been there too, which, Ryan riding Montreal, you've definitely made some good coin picking the Canadiens throughout the playoffs up until this point. But when you're so far in like that, it's just, you can't at this point. What are you going to go away from it? You can't, because you get caught up in it. But
and you have people asking, it's like, well, can't he's on a big site. Couldn't he just like not bet that night? And I'm like, no, that's not how it works. I mean, look, we talked about it last night. Matt McEwen, Sasha from the site, a couple other people affiliated with Sports Betting Diamond, a couple of betting sites out there, and they asked me about the whole the hot dog eating contest, and compare the two for the fun of it. And I said to them, I was like, it's the same sort of thing in the sense, Tampa Bay is probably going to win. So you kind of have to sit there and go, well, here's the goat, Joey Chestnut.
Yeah.
At minus something thousand, whatever. I still have to bet them.
It's the price to pay.
But it's
price to play.
But it's simple. It's like, can I find value somewhere else in those bets to make a little bit more money? And I said to somebody, look, why not take the DK boost? And they're like, he's not going to eat 75 again. I'm like, do I have to pull out the weather report? Okay, hold on. So I sit there, and that's like, I crinkle, nice paper, make it sound official. Because the guy's like, oh, it's supposed to be really humid on Sunday at Coney Island. And I'm like, okay, well, first off, they're having it at a park this year. They're not having it on the steps of around the boardwalk. They're having it at a park right near the boardwalk. This dumbly makes a difference. Don't ask me how. I was like, second, the humidity is only going to be like 45 to 55%. It's actually supposed to be a nice northwest wind in the afternoon. Don't ask me. I know way too much about this. It's just how it goes. I was like, he's going to eat at least 75. I was like, my prediction is he eats 76 because he wants to put on a show, because last year they ate like in what felt like a concubine in some undisclosed location in a bubble. I was like, look at the way he's going to come out. Probably he's going to come out probably like Ric Flair, come out like a boss. You know what's going to happen. He didn't have this last year. There was no fanfare. You have to believe, again, he's going to put on a show. It's like tonight. You have to believe that Tampa Bay is going to put on a show. It's whether Montreal can match that. And inevitably, at some point in juncture, whether it's tonight, whether it's Wednesday night or whatever, Tampa Bay is going to win this series. Look, their series odds right now, minus 5,000. You know what Joey Chestnut's odds on Friday were for the hot dog eating competition, Steven? Minus 5,000.
Those are the put it on a show odds.
It was crazy. I mean, I looked at it's like, by the way, I did nail Michelle Lesko. I just didn't get the hot dogs right. I was off by 2. And I was off by 2 on the second place guy who finished behind Joey Chestnut. And by being off 2, I knew that minus 25.5 was real close. I got nailed on that too, because he only won by 25 hot dogs. And actually, technically, he ate 77, but he kind of didn't swallow it fully in time. So they counted 76, or at least that's what we were told anyway. Because if you watch the stream, even the stream, when you watch back later that they had on YouTube and such, cuts it out. So you don't get the full 11, 12-minute video that they tried to show. But like I said, Tampa Bay is going to win. It is sadly inevitable. And for Montreal fans out there, look, I will say this now. There's a lot of people that I have to thank. I was fortunate enough in March to take on a beat writing assignment that I had no idea what I was in for. First off, yeah, I do speak a little bit of French, so that does help. But I had no clue. And I had so many people, Andrew Berkshire, Eric Engels. I mean, I could go up, down, and sideways. Even Lyle Richardson, who was an excellent help, because even though he's not covering the Montreal Canadiens, he's a Montreal Canadiens fan since he was like about, up to here on me. I mean, just people like that who were literally so forthright and so becoming, where it was like, wow, if I need something, okay, we have your back. It's like, we know you. It doesn't matter, what you do, where you come from. You can cover a team. It's fine. It's fine by us. And it meant a lot for me, at least. And it was very humbling. And for them to go on this run, it's kind of nice, because I had this happen with Dallas last year. So, I am for rent here. I mean, if you want your team to go on a nice playoff run, and, I'm doing a secondary beat again, I mean, just, inquire within. But it's been a crazy ride.
Yeah, no kidding, Chris. And I appreciate you coming on the show today to break it down and look back at the run that was with Montreal, the run that still is. It's not over yet. So
not over yet.
Yeah, we'll see what happens in Game 4. But Chris, thanks so much for being on the show today.
You're welcome always, Stephen.